Say the Semantics, episode 322. It is June 12th, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Thursday afternoon slash evening. A lovely Thursday evening here. Nice and, I guess it's a little warm, right? But it's like right about the perfect weather that you could get until it starts to kind of pick up going into the summer. But yeah, it's so we got ourselves a series. Pacers Thunder game 3 last night. One of the better, these whole playoffs have been excellent. They've been awesome. But I would say the game with the most weight to it so far has been game 3. And I'm sure that, game 4 is probably going to determine who is going to win the series, in a sense, right? Like just in terms of the momentum and all of these things. But yeah, this game 3 was incredible. I was able to watch it with a friend, so I had someone that I could kind of just like ramble and kind of just be nerdy about, the great stuff that was happening, you know what I mean? Pacers win game 3 in a pretty substantial fashion. I'll get into kind of what I was able to kind of pick up on, and what really stood out to me. But this is I think the fact that this series and this, the Pacers team in general and just this run that they've had during these playoffs have really just been such an indication of like, the fact that sometimes analytically analysts and just, talk, media, discussions alike, can be just incorrect about a lot of things, right? I feel that this team and what they've been able to do, I think if they were it's a little too, because it's only 2-1, right? 2-1's nothing. It doesn't really indicate anything. Like once you get into the 3-1 territory, that's going to be a whole nother discussion, right? But it's 2-1 right now. And but I do think it is fair to maybe envision what it would look like if Indiana were to win. And I think I will say, like, even if they do lose, which, it's like, okay, that was kind of like the likely outcome considering who they were going up against. I still think that this would be one of the greatest playoff runs that we've had in recent history, like alongside maybe that 2023 Miami Heat run, right? I just think in that case, it just was such a, they were able to get past, like, some pretty good teams in the Bucks and the Celtics and the Knicks, but I think that their their ceiling was pretty high, pretty capped with who they had. Jimmy Butler was, pretty banged up by the end of that run, and they were going up against Jokic. Like I think there were a lot of things that were, you could see kind of the it just felt like a lot more of a likelihood that it would have been hard to kind of envision them getting past, especially that 2023 Nuggets team. It just felt like they were just clicking, especially on the offensive end, on all cylinders, and they were an incredibly strong team that year. They did steal game 2 in Denver, but like outside of that, like it just was like, yeah, I don't know. Like maybe it was. I was feeling maybe that could have been a bit more of a series, like after game 2 of the 23 finals. But it just didn't like moving forward. It just never felt like Miami had any semblance of like momentum or like any moments during the rest of that series that they had any like, oh, this could be the one. But like it just like it never came out that way. Like immediately with game one of this series with the Pacers and their steal and their kind of just almost signature style of win where they just win in the clutch, I think really set the tone for the rest of the series. Like, obviously stealing home court in a lot of ways is incredibly important in terms of the road team being able to, you know, kind of, essentially, set their, put their, make their presence known. But I think in the fashion that they did it was just like, oh, okay, this is like, they're doing this again. They're doing this again. And they have a real chance in this series. Like even, I think, I think, my thoughts on and my predictions about this series was like, Thunder and I said what, Thunder in 5 or 6. That's still, obviously the 5 is gonna, that doesn't, that has kind of gone to the side. But I really felt like, after game 2 and kind of that them winning in sort of like a pretty substantial fashion and blowing the Pacers out, it felt, it was like, okay, I think this is kind of the team and this is sort of the series that we were envisioning, which I think, was like a little disappointing. But I think it's so easy to get caught up on a game to game basis. Even right now, I think a lot of people are like proclaiming that this is over, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like this is far from over. Like this is going to be at least a 6 or 7 game series. And but I do feel like that game 1 was like kind of like, hey, listen, this is the finals. You know what I mean? And I think the Thunder, it was maybe quick of them to just sort of release hold of that lead that they had, which like 4 other teams also did, right? Like you let go of the rope slightly, you give them like an inch and they'll take a mile, and that's exactly what happened. But I really feel there is just like a different feeling from this series versus the last couple of finals, right? Where it feels like the lower seeded team, the underdog in this case, for the Pacers, really do have a chance to win this series. They have, the players feel like they're confident, like they do have, like, again, Halliburton is not this like, 3 level type scorer, and he's not like, he's not SGA, but he is this offensive machine. Like he is, he is essentially kind of the system of their offense, right? He's like kind of the true point guard in that nature. And the surrounding cast that this team has is incredibly strong, and you can kind of pinpoint, you can sort of pick and choose like whoever to really step up in a role each game. In game 3, that was the bench. Game 3, it was Benedict Mathurin and TJ McConnell, who had just like these awesome moments. I can just like think of just like certain moments during the game where you're like, that was like the key moment of this game. But you could proclaim that for like multiple instances, right? Whether it was like in the first half or in the fourth quarter, like TJ McConnell did his thing. The one where he stole, like it was like a football interception where he took it from like the out of bounds, you know the pass out of bounds from Caruso. It just went straight to him, but it looked like he was, it's like a football interception. Yeah, let me just, I took like a couple of notes just of like, the main sort of highlights, obviously like the minutia of things. I'm not like super, like, I'm not super locked on to, but I am paying better attention to those kinds of things as I listen to podcasts and those kinds of things. But I mean, the biggest thing that like stood out to me was the defense. Like Indiana's defense was like incredible. Honestly, like this was like the first like we saw Denver kind of employ different things against OKC in, the way in which they employed zone certain during certain, like, certain possessions and those kinds of things, and that kind of mixed up, OKC daring, some of the role players to shoot threes and that kind of thing. But like the pressure, sort of akin to how OKC, you know, applies pressure to with their defense, they essentially kind of did their own version of that against the Thunder, and it was just so like evident, like you could just feel like kind of how like suffocated SGA was. Like he was just exhausted. Like he was just completely, just like wiped out by the end of the game. Like he I think he had like 3 points in the fourth quarter, so he was just not effective at all. He had a bunch of turnovers. He just did not get to, he wasn't able to get to his spots. Like he struggled, like because of just like that full court kind of pressure mentality that the Pacers employed. And I thought that was just like incredible to watch. Like it was just awesome. Like it was awesome seeing like, you know, it was awesome seeing like kind of, McConnell's activity on the defensive end where he went for the steals. Like Halliburton had like had a pretty big steal, I think, in the third quarter. And then just all the other moments, like the Miles Turner like block and like defensive stop against Chet was awesome. That was like such an incredible sequence where he blocked him at three, and then also blocked him. I don't know if they credit him with a block on that play where Chet kind of drove to the lane, but it was like Turner and I think Toppin who came out with like the additional defensive pressure, and that sort of stopped. And it was just like that was like incredible to see. And I think people, I think, myself included, like earlier in the season, or, just like during the regular season, I think there was this sort of narrative, I think, that kind of carried over from last year, where last year they were known as just this like, they were primarily known for being just like this offensive juggernaut, and defensively they were poor, right? Like it was just kind of this, the scale, the balance of scales, where it's just like one side was, kind of their bread and butter, and the other side, they just couldn't, hold very well on their own. This playoff run, I think, and also just like over the course of the regular season leading into the playoffs, completely kind of like disputed that sort of narrative and identity that was surrounding these Pacers. Like sure, they were still frenetic and just like a huge, like there was just so much activity going on the offensive end, but they do have the players that can pressure the ball with like a Nemhard or a Neesmith. And they do have the team defense. Like Halliburton, I think, has really, shown that he can be like a defensive, he can provide some defensive leverage if needed. Like he had like a couple of moments where he stole the ball from SGA. And then he also like, there was like, I think SGA traveled at a certain point, and I think he was kind of, part of that coverage as well. So they've really just found this kind of like the offensive motion that they provide, I think, has kind of translated to their defensive presence as well. And that's just what that's really like held OKC to, one of their tougher games in this game, right? Like although SGA, he had 24 points, like that's just not like a good number for him. The other players, like J-Dub and Chet, like they did have good games, like, numbers wise, like analytically or whatever. But if you were just watching the game, like especially Chet in the fourth quarter, like he was just getting absolutely manhandled by Miles Turner defensively. Like there were a couple of moments where, Turner just overpowered him on the offensive end as well. So it's just like it's a combination. It's a combination of a lot of things, but if you just want to do it surface level analysis, it's a combination of just like effort and just general activity and mayhem that the Pacers kind of bring, just like philosophically and tangibly that they bring onto the court. And I think it's just incredible to watch, and it's really translated into like just incredible basketball to watch in general. And this game in particular was just like the finest example of what they're able to bring to the court. And this is this is their best game that I feel like they've had these playoff series, like against the opponent that they're facing. Game 4 is going to be huge. I think it's going to be like, this game felt like it had that kind of weight. It's been a long time since like we've had one of these games where it's like been like, oh shit, if it comes down to this, like honestly, it probably goes back to like the Warriors run when they were down 2-1, or the Bucks, or the Bucks championship when they were down 2-0. Like there's a lot at stake for OKC here. Like, are they going to be able to, tie this up, and bring it back, essentially, win back home court? We'll see. I think it's going to be, I'm I'm so excited for game 4. Tomorrow is going to be awesome. I just have like, it's I've talked about this, how I was kind of just, I was also kind of busy at the time, so I couldn't really engage with the finals last year. But even 2023, even when I was kind of watching, when I was like, when I was paying attention, like it just did not have that same level of competition, where it feels like the teams are very evenly matched, like regardless of their records. And it just didn't seem like one team was like, they had just like this clear advantage. I think that, it's easy to sort of conclude that something is sort of complete when you just look at something, you just sort of, predict something based off of the numbers or whatever. But that just has not been the case at all these playoffs. And the key to that has been the Pacers, right? Like every single series that they've been in, except for the Bucks one, they've been kind of this underdog team. And it's just like, well, the better team is going to win. It's like, nah, that's just too simple. It's way too simple. Like there's so many things that go into it, right? And I feel like this, I feel like it's given me like, an immense amount of appreciation for kind of what they've been able to bring. Listening to kind of certain analysis and watching videos of just like breakdowns of, what Indiana has done is just like it's been such a cool insight into like what incredibly high level basketball looks like, right? Like to like the nth degree, which I just cannot even, I can't even imagine like comprehending, because like every single, like when I was watching yesterday, like it felt like every single possession mattered, which it does, right? But it really felt that way because there's such a deliberate attention to detail on each side of the ball. There is like so much communication that is needed for to coordinate defenses, to run in like exact offenses, to get certain players into the actions that they want to get them to. So whenever a player makes a mistake, like for example, like the Alex Caruso, essentially pass to TJ McConnell, like it's so much more apparent, because it's like that was such a huge play that like, it really sticks out to you, because it's like it's a massive error and kind of, unforced error on the Thunder's on the Thunder's end, and then also this huge momentum swinger for the Pacers. Like you can just kind of feel it. You know what I mean? Each point matters. Every possession matters. Like just there was just like this. There's just such an attention to detail that I don't think that I can even really comprehend. You know what I mean? Just like the little things that players do that I feel, that most casual viewers, you know, which I do still consider myself like a casual viewer, but I'm doing a lot more to try to like pay attention to the certain plays that they run, and like, whether they're setting like a screen, high and closer to half court, or if they're, kind of going like five out and running like, other screen actions like off ball. Like those are kinds of things that I'm trying to like pay more attention to like kind of see like what makes like Indiana in particular work so well, and also what makes, the Thunder such a deadly team, even though they didn't win yesterday. So it's just been such a fun like thing to kind of like really pay attention to. Like I feel like I've really gotten better at watching the game and recognizing, what they're trying to do. Whether it's like like an ISO play to take advantage of like a mismatch, like these are like things that I really am like really starting to kind of hone in on. And it's been, just being, watching like the game as, it's like, oh, they made like a three and stuff. It's still incredibly exciting, but like the nuances of the game have made me just appreciate the game even more. And I just will I recognize that I'll never reach that kind of level in terms of like my understanding, but I can certainly try, because I think it's so much fun to watch when like super high level teams and super high level, competitors like go at it, and just kind of like the different movements that coaches and stuff employ to try to get like get a step up on, just like the strategic kind of battle that is going on alongside the actual basketball. I think is has been really fascinating to really kind of, pick up on. So I've really enjoyed that. It's been a great, despite game 2 being being a blowout, this is now a series. this is now a series. And I still feel, it's like game to game, like I know it's probably a little annoying to like, go back and forth in terms of predictions, right? Because it's like, obviously now you got the Pacers up by 2-1. It's kind of like, is like, oh, now, now the momentum has shifted to like the Pacers and stuff like that. I still feel like OKC, they didn't have a particularly great game yesterday. I think they'll win game 4, but it's not going to be easy. Like this is kind of, that Denver series, they were down 2-1, and I think, that was kind of like that was like a serious sort of like gut check test for them. They had like a few of those moments, I think, during that series, leading up into game 7, where they, eventually blew them out. But I think it's kind of a different caliber team, Denver versus this Pacers team. One, the Pacers are, all mostly healthy except for like Jarris Walker, I think. And 2, they just have the caliber of players that can defend on like a consistent basis. Like they've thrown so many different players. Like I've noticed that they've thrown like so many different players at SGA. Like they've had like Nembhard and Nesmith and Ben Shepherd. Sometimes Halliburton is on him. Siakam has guarded him on like some possessions. Like it's just like they have, maybe it's not going to be like a perfect matchup, against SGA, but they have the personnel to be able to defend against him. So like it's just not been the same level of defense that SGA has faced over the course of these playoffs. So I think that's been a huge, like, I talked about the defense kind of being like the, the very first thing that I wanted to make note of, but it's just been kind of like a huge point of I just was like it's like not something that he's faced, so he's I think he'll adjust. Like I think he'll have like a good game on Friday, but yeah, we'll see. But it's been great. I've had it's just been such a fun series to watch so far, despite game two, right? Knowing that we have, if this goes to seven, I'll be really happy. Like this will be one of the better finals series that we've had in some time. So yeah, fingers crossed that it gets to that point. Let's shift a bit. Let's talk about the Switch 2. So earlier, was it last week or this week? The Nintendo updated the sales figures for the Switch 2 after its release, and they've announced that they have sold 3.5 million Switch units, Switch 2 units, which is like essentially it's a record for any console launch within like the first like 3 days or even like a month or so, which is pretty crazy. I kind of want to get into this a little bit because I talked about this, in regards to, reception of the announcement versus like what the actual numbers tell us. But yeah, I mean, it's like a huge, that's a pretty, big, big opening kind of number there. And, yeah, it seems like overall the reception to just the console in general has been largely positive. Like, sure, there's going to be some things here and there. Like, of course, like the $80 price tag for Mario Kart World is going to continue to be sort of like a bit of a stinger here. But I think, for people, including myself, who were critical of that pricing, I think it's just the unfortunate fact of like of like a essentially kind of like a luxury item of a good that's not necessarily a necessity, is that it's difficult to kind of like, I know people, it's just like, the drop the price kind of comments that you saw on like YouTube and Reddit and other places. Like it is sort of it is not reflective of reality, right? And I think it's difficult to like boycott against a consumer product like a video game system, because it's just not to the same degree. You don't need to buy it, right? You don't need to buy it as a necessity, or you don't need it to. It's not like essential. It's not an essential good. So I feel it's kind of hard to boycott against that. You know what I mean? I understand the notion. I absolutely do. I think it is fair to push back on things like corporate greed, absolutely. But it's a little difficult to do something like that because of the nature of the product and the fact that the kind of the elasticity, which means like how much of the product is going to be based on how much of the demand can be kind of wavered based on the price. It seems that it did not really hinder the demand for this the higher pricing of both the console and the games did not really hinder the demand for this was still very highly in demand, and people went out in droves to purchase it. So the price was not to this this almost obscene degree to where it put off like a ton of people. We'll see long term what that looks like, whether this system is able to have the legs to maintain a longer lifespan akin to Switch 1. I don't think that's going to be the case. But so far, just based on just kind of the very first week, it's shown that online sentiment in a lot of instances does not equal failure, right? I mean, there are instances where you can pinpoint and say like, hey, actually this thing where there was this, I guess, like online outrage actually led to some substantial tangible results, but in this case that was not it. Which I think is a bit of an unfortunate thing because it because it essentially tells companies, such as Nintendo, that, oh, it's okay, actually actually just continue to price games within this range, and also charge for the what should have been the built-in demo and those kinds of things. So the sort of the takeaway that I think Nintendo has is not going to be good. I think that this just is going to mean that they'll be able to continue pushing prices, right? Which it's kind of, I think the argument that can be made is that it's going to be because of inflation or whatever, but no, it's because of demand. They can continue to do that because as as long as there is, some form of demand for Nintendo consoles, they are now kind of in that echelon because of the Switch's success, that they can that they are able to do these things, and people are going to buy them, right? I mean, I will eventually buy the system, right? I'll still hold off on it for the time being because I just don't have I'm just not incentivized to purchase it for right now, and kind of based on what I've seen, it's not. It gives me a little kind of, maybe pause for concern, which I'll get into a little bit in a little bit, but yeah, I mean, it's been a success. It's been a resounding success so far, and yeah, all of those. It's not unwarranted. It's not I think people can absolutely feel kind of, concerned about the prices and all these kinds of things, but I think the results have shown that those things do not carry the most water in a lot of instances, and especially regarding consumer products, it just is not to the same degree as, I don't know, protesting something a lot more substantial. So yeah, that's just kind of a news update, and yeah, just kind of paying attention and just looking over some of the, I guess, reviews slash kind of overviews that I've seen of the system itself. It looks like it is a really substantial upgrade from Switch 1 in terms of just like the quality, and that is a huge selling point for me. The big thing for me, I think, is obviously the games that come with it, the exclusive games and whatnot. The backwards compatibility checks, one of my big boxes. I mostly play handheld. I just prefer to do that. I'm able to, I'm able to use my headphones. I like being able to kind of, listen to the music or whatever for any of the games that I'm playing. That's a huge part for me. The battery is apparently it's quick to drain. And with the original Switch, I can play undocked for quite a while, a few hours, honestly. Maybe like, if I'm playing something like Xenoblade, maybe it's maybe 2.5 hours or so. So it drains a lot quicker because of, the just what you kind of need for those bigger games. But but in general, I think it's maybe around like a few hours, right? If it's, a bit less of a taxing a game, something along the lines of Slay the Spire or something along those lines. But I 2 hours is pretty short, right? I could have the charging cable, the USB cord there to charge the system, absolutely, but but based on what I've heard, there is the heating system, or the cooling system rather, with the fan the internal fan, it gets pretty hot regardless. So I'm a little just based on that, I'm a little hesitant to kind of. That's another point of maybe contention for me to dissuade me from purchasing. So I yeah, I'm a little I'm a little more hesitant, I feel, to kind of pick that up. So it's probably not going to be the biggest issue by any means, but as someone who does primarily play handheld, I that's another reason for me to maybe kind of hold off until further notice, basically, right? So of course the graphical upgrades and all of these things are huge. I have seen the kind of the side by side comparisons of older games, how they run on the original Switch versus how they run on Switch 2, and there are some pretty big leaps in terms of performance. The ones that really stuck out to me were the two kind of top down Zelda games with Echoes of Wisdom and Link's Awakening, which I have not yet played. That is kind of a bit. That is pretty big. Because I did notice a lot of slowdown in certain areas with Echoes of Wisdom. So I think if I were, when I do play Link's Awakening, I think I might actually want to play it on the Switch 2 versus the original Switch. It wasn't the biggest issue, right? Because I still played and thoroughly enjoyed Echoes of Wisdom, but I do. It can be a bit of a sight for sore eyes, unfortunately, with the frame rate just dipping in and out of 30 FPS and lower. I just can't. That's just too. That's tough. It's tough, and that was one of my biggest complaints about the game was the performance issues with Echoes of Wisdom. So I think that is something that I am kind of putting as a pro for getting a Switch 2. So yeah, and also if I want to replay Xenoblade, which I will, because I just that's like the one series that I will replay at times. Just seeing what that would look like. I haven't really seen a ton of comparisons yet because it doesn't seem like a patch has been applied with Switch 2. I'm wondering if there's going to be like a paid upgrade, which I'm a sucker. I'll probably get that for Xenoblade. So I'm going to kind of wait to see what that looks like. That will be kind of that'll be another big point for me to look into. But yeah, just overall it seems like it's pretty good. Like the quality of the Joy-Cons and the control and the screen and all of these things look to be a big upgrade from Switch 1. But outside of that, there are little things here and there that I'm a little hesitant on. Obviously just the the games in general. Mario Kart looks fun, but I've also just watching some of the gameplay for that. It does look pretty, I don't know, it looks pretty frustrating. It is funny to kind of see, maybe streamer reactions and that kind of thing. But in terms of me actually playing it, it looks really chaotic. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know how well I can kind of handle that frustration. And also it just doesn't seem there's this kind of like free roam, section of the game that was sort of touted as like a big point for World. It just doesn't seem like there's like a whole lot going on there. If you're gonna have kind of like an open world sort of thing going on, you're gonna have to do a lot more to kind of garner my attention. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna really be there for that as the primary thing to get the game for, but it is part of it. You know what I mean? Like if I get sick of online multiplayer, I got to find some other way to keep me entertained. And just based on some of the things that I've seen, it just doesn't seem to be quite enough to catch my catch my attention. So I'll probably hold off on that. Maybe I'll get it sometime in the future. I'll see how I feel. I will definitely get Switch 2, but it's just based on consensus so far and based on some of the maybe minor things that stick out. Yeah, I'll probably hold off on it for a good amount of time, unless, I don't know, unless I'm feeling impulsive, which I'm really trying to like hold myself to being a little less, you know, just be a bit more patient. You know what I mean? Like I can wait a little bit longer. I still have plenty of games. I can still get plenty of games on Switch One, and and I don't need this, the shiny new toy. It looks nice, absolutely. I've waited a while for it, but I can afford to be patient, and I think I'm gonna try my best to do that, even if there is something that kind of tugs at me. But we'll see. I'll definitely try my best though to hold off. So yeah, that's kind of just a Switch 2 update, and I will kind of continue to, if there's anything else that really sticks out, because it is like, again, this is sort of the first launch that I've really paid attention to in recent memory. So I would like to try and I would like to try to kind of document that as well, because it is a pretty big moment. So yeah, anyways, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening as always. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.